Hi, welcome back. We're talking today about some furniture flipping fails. So I'm just wrapping up a white cabinet project, and I'm putting the hardware back on the final pieces here of this project. So I will show you what going to be working on while we're discussing these fails. So as you're doing a project, you think you have all these great ideas that you've come up with as you go, and sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today related to our white cabinet makeover project. The first thing that we did with this project that was a big fail was we started out talking about it as a beach makeover and that it was going to be a beachy redo of this white cabinet. And I came up with that based on the fact that that's what I kind of wanted it to look like, and also the fact that I thought the colors that I selected were beachy colors. Well, as I got going in the project, it wasn't looking beachy at all. I was really liking the way it was looking, but it definitely didn't look beachy. So I just let that evolve and let it just happen and flow. And I think that was the greatest victory of the project, was just letting the creativity of the project just flow and come out as I made mistakes and as things progressed through the project. So I'd say that was a really good lesson. While it was a fail to call it something beachy, and then when it's actually French, it's a big fail. But the lesson learned there was it's a great just to let your project flow and get creative ideas as you make mistakes and you move on and it takes on a different maybe look or a different tone. That's easier to do when it's your own project and you're not doing it, for specific specs for a customer. So it depends what you're doing. This particular project I was doing for myself, so I could be a little bit more open with my creativity. So that was probably the biggest fail of the project, but also the biggest lesson learned. So I was really glad it happened because a lot of cool things came out of it. The second fail was I decided that it would be a great idea to not waste paint. And so I wanted the shelves of my project, and you can see the project in the background, it's right there. I wanted these shelves, they were a little dingy, so I wanted to do something with them to cover them. So I thought, oh, well, instead of wasting paint when I'm done, doing a part of the project, instead of washing all this paint off, I'll offload it onto these shelves. I thought, well, what a great idea. Not a great idea. And I thought, oh, it looks kind of like I dry brushed it and I did a little technique on it, as I was doing it. And, I did do some decorative design work on it, but bad idea, huge fail to unload your brush on your project if you think it's going to look nice. Mine certainly did not. So that was a huge fail. The lesson learned out of that and the really good thing that happened out of that was I decided I had to cover it, and I ended up decoupaging the shelves, which I wasn't planning on doing. And it was a huge enhancement to the piece, and it happened to make it look more French. So I got the hinges on that one. This is exciting. Oh, well, there's a huge fail right there. I ran the screw right through the wood of the piece. Well, you saw a fail right before your eyes. That's not a good idea. Well, I'll have to see if I need to fix that. Anyway, back to the rest of our project. Did a great live on camera fail there. That was awful. So lesson learned, make sure you're using the right screws when you put your hardware back on. So my other fail I wanted to go over with the piece was that I was painting two different colors on the surfaces. And so I didn't want it to bleed over onto the other surface. So I thought it'd be a great idea to put a block up and so my paintbrush wouldn't go around the edge and get paint on the other side. And I did that a couple times. Well, what happened was my paint did get on the block I was using, and it was an envelope, which was another kind of stupid idea. An envelope. And then when I would move the envelope to a new part of the project, because there was wet paint on it, it got paint on the side of the cabinet, which was exactly what I was trying not to do. So that was a huge, huge fail. And I ended up having to repaint those areas. So that was another really big fail that I did and continued to do before I even noticed that it was happening. So great idea. All right, we're moving on to another one of our pieces. Let's see how bad that hole is. Yep, and it chipped off the paint. So my on-air live fail ran my hardware through the back and onto the front of the piece that I had just painted and I'm finishing. So now there's a little mark there. So I'm going to have to touch that up. Not a great idea to not label your hardware before you put it on. Okay, we're going to get another piece. This is our Annunciation door, and we're going to put the hardware on there and make sure that we use the small screws. All right, so one of the other fails that occurred while I was doing the project was I decided that I wanted to leave these edges because they're nice and small and they're white. And so I thought it was a nice two-tone if I would leave those white. So I decided I was going to leave those unpainted while I was doing the project, but I decided I wasn't going to tape them off, that I was just going to be careful cutting them. Well, I was using a brush, a bristle brush, and I just wasn't successful at cutting those edges and not having tiny bristles of the brush go over onto the edge of the piece. So then I ended up having to paint it. So fixes to that, or ways that I could have prevented that from happening, would be I could have taped it off, or I could have used a sponge brush when I was painting. Sponge brushes, of course, don't have the bristles, and that was the issue that was occurring, was the tiny bristles, just a few, would go over as I was painting, and they would, just glaze a little bit of paint on there, but enough to see it that I ended up having to paint all the edges then. So it was just something I thought was a great idea. Not. I had to go in and repaint it. And so much is the case, when you do make mistakes, you have to go in usually and repaint or fix or take it off. In my cases, I got pretty lucky. My mistakes either triggered enhancements to my piece or changes in the way that it looked. That one's done. Or my mistakes caused something better to happen overall for the piece. So I was pretty lucky. The other good thing about working with chalk paint is that it's really easy to fix your mistakes. It's easy to go in with chalk paint after it has dried and touch up areas or repaint over things, and it doesn't leave obvious marks like a typical acrylic or oil-based paint, latex, might do. So that part is really, really nice. So you don't have to be afraid of making mistakes. They can have really positive effects on your piece, and I feel in the case of this particular piece, they were really positive. So another thing that I did that I thought was a good idea, but was kind of a fail, I was able to fix it pretty easily, was with these cabinet doors right here. I decided to put these pictures, which you can see here, to show through. And they really enhanced the piece. They made it look very European, gave it that French look, actually. It was part of the thing that changed the look of the piece. And it was really easy to do. I just attached them with these tabs that were already there and put them behind the glass, printed them out on my computer. Copyright free, of course. Anyway, so the paper, it fit fine and everything like that. But for the use that we're going to use these for, we open these when we're using this piece of furniture and we set things on the backs. They're little drawstring doors that come down like a shelf. And we use this to set things on. And sometimes it's a glass of water or things like that. So it wasn't a great idea to put paper there. So I ended up having to put plastic covers over top of the paper, which you can see here, that would protect it for when we were using it in that manner. And that was just kind of a poor planning on my part. But again, a fail, something I thought was a great idea at first to put these pictures in here. And then I'm like, well, for the function of the piece and what I know we're going to be using this for, this is not going to work. You know, these will get wet, they will get ripped. They would get ruined almost probably after the first couple days of using it. So it was a fail, but something that I was easily able to fix. And, you know, if I was doing this piece for a customer, I definitely would, have some sort of protection there. It would have been more obvious to me. I think sometimes when you're doing something for yourself as opposed to a customer, you might not think you need to pull out all the stops. And maybe I was just trying to cut a corner and I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have cut myself short. I should have known to put the plastic on from the beginning. So we have all the hardware on now, and this piece is coming to a close. It's always fun to reflect on the piece and go over times that I thought I was having great ideas and really was not at all. So thanks for joining us on this journey and stay tuned to see the final piece. Bye.